Hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries Live with Tanya E. Hood. I'm glad I get the chance to join you again. And if you listen to this morning's episode, then you already know that we're going to have a deeper conversation about a story that I read. And because I've heard a few of you already share, thank you so much for letting me know that you want to know where I got the story from. So I'm going to read the story to you, but before I read it, there's a few disclaimers. One of the disclaimers I got to put in place is because of where I got the story from. Some of you know that one of my favorite books is the Bible. And when you read stories out the Bible and give your own interpretation, sometimes, depending on who you are and how you do it, some people have some issues with it. So here's my disclaimer. First and foremost, every one of us looks at the world through our own lens. So when I read the Bible, getting my own personal insight about what God is trying to tell me in my situation, that moment is a relational moment. This has nothing to do with religion. So when I give you the interpretation that gave me the strategies and actionable steps, it's because I have learned in my relationship with God that the Bible is a strategy guide, an instruction book, a love story. It is great insight that we can apply to our lives. And if you ever ask God to show you how those stories, because it's also a history book, apply to you and your world in your moment in history, you'll get some insight that will support you. Because the strategies that I shared this morning, all of them came from the Bible and all of them came from this story. So some of you may have sort of got a little bit of inflection about what the story is about. The man by the pool of Bethesda. It's in John chapter 5. So I'm going to read the story first, and then I'll give you my interpretation. And for those of you that want to go deeper into the conversation a little bit more, we can have an outside Bible study session. Let me know. Occasionally, I put some of those on. They usually take place offline, but if you want to join, let me know by putting in "I want to go" in the comments below. So let me read first, and then I'll give the interpretation next. So I'm reading out of the New Living Translation. For those of you that would like to read along or know what I'm reading, it goes like this. The story is found in John chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. I'm reading it first, and then I will go back and give you my translation and how I came with the strategies this morning. Afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holidays, holy days. Apologies. But I'll explain something a little bit later. Starting over. Afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda, with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" "I can't, sir," the sick man said, "for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me." Jesus told him, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath. So the Jewish leaders objected. They said to the man who was cured, "You, you can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry that sleeping mat." But he replied, "The man who healed me told me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" "Who said such a thing?" they demanded. The man didn't know, for Jesus had disappeared into the crowd. But afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and told him, "Now you are well. So stop sinning, or something even worse may happen to you." Then the man went and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had healed him. Now, I'm going to pause for a quick second here because I said earlier that the word holy was holiday. Some of you already know because I've shared in a couple of different episodes. And for those of you that don't know, I am dyslexic. So, being a dyslexic nerd, there are moments when I'm reading, my brain does what it does and gives me special insight on some words. So, in my translation, sometimes when I'm reading, my dyslexia kicks in, like I see holy is holiday. That often occurs in a moment that gives me a different perception. Because for some individuals, when they think about the Bible and the scriptures, yes, God is holy. But when we read it, we should celebrate it like it's a holiday. So when I read the Bible, give my personal interpretation, the download that I ask from Jesus, it's a happy moment for me. And when I recognize, because I ask God while I'm reading, before I start sometimes, and while I'm reading through, give me the understanding of what you want me to know. So, in my understanding, you got this morning's interpretation of the man that had this affliction for 38 years. Now, let me walk over some of the touch points. Because in the beginning, it shared that afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. There's moments in our lives that Jesus returns for those of you that believe. We're living life, doing our thing, and we forget that Jesus is there. So there are moments in your life that will arise where Jesus returns. When I was walking through and got a deeper insight for this lesson, it was in my moment where Jesus was returning in the aftermath of my divorce while I was still dealing with the chaos. I was in that two-bedroom apartment trying to figure it out. And when you find yourself in a place where you don't have hope and you forget who you are, you often end up thinking you have got to do everything by yourself. So, in that moment, in that apartment, that was my moment that Jesus returned. So that when I was asking God to give me an insight about what to do next so that I could have better, be better, and do better, this story came to mind. Here's the next part that reads. It said that he was at the pool of Bethesda where there were crowds of sick people, the blind, the lame, and all. There are moments that you may be in an area where some people got the same mess that you have. So if you are surrounded by people in the same chaos that you're surrounded in, they don't know any different because it's normal. You don't know any different because it's normal. And in this morning's episode, I shared if you are surrounding yourself by people with the same pain points as you, trying to get a breakthrough, and you don't have encouragement, why would they encourage you? They think that it is normal. There are moments in your life that you'll have to be moved out of that direction. And that's why Jesus went to the man and said, do you want to get well? Because some of us, and I'm speaking mostly me, because when I was reading this lesson and it first came to mind, I thought I wanted to be well because I was tired of doing the single parent thing, trying to figure it out. What else was I going to do? How was I going to manage? I still had a household that required two incomes. Still did not want to be a single mother raising Black sons. So I acquiesced to what was familiar. I acquiesced to what society said, and I listened to the sick and the lame about my moments. And when Jesus met me again in the middle of the chaos and said, do you want to get well? I did what this man did, gave an excuse. If you are sick, 38 years, that's a long time. When you are in your pain for a long time and somebody asks you, do you want to get well? You think that it's a possibility, but somewhere along the way, hope eluded you and you give the answers that you think people want to hear. You know, those cliched moments, especially when you're reading Bible stories and going through these Bible discussions. We have this Christianese of, oh, God is good, trouble won't last always. Those are true statements. But do you really believe it? Do you honestly trust God to meet you in your mess, to give you the message that you need to get healed and whole and moved into a better direction? Because this man gave an excuse. And when God met me in the aftermath of my divorce and my chaos in that apartment, I gave an excuse as well. That's how I know when I shared this morning that there are moments when you would think that if you're in the middle of chaos, you would say yes if somebody said, I got a solution. But we don't. We often let life do what life does to us. Because when you're in survival mode, you can't think past that moment. And the chaos often causes you to do what this man did. But here's the next part of the lessons that I learned. So after this man got healed, his healing when Jesus said, stand up, pick up your mat and walk, instantaneously, the man was healed. But he didn't know his healing took place until he did what was instructed. You see, there are moments in our lives where God will give us instantaneous healing if you trust him, if you believe him, because I did not recognize when I was going through my mess that there was an instantaneous healing. You see, I was about to go and have a conversation with the rental office about that apartment because I got an eviction notice. And I just wanted to go find out how long would it take before they started putting my stuff on the street. When I was reading the Bible, there was a different part of the Bible that I was reading. It wasn't this particular story, but it was a reminder when I got back from the rental office, because some of you have heard me share, that when I went to the rental office, because in my quiet time with God, he said, go to your creditors and make an agreement. So I was going to the rental office of that apartment to get an idea of, is there anything I could possibly do? And if all else failed, how long would it take before the sheriff's department came to put my stuff on the street so that I can get what I needed, at least something for me and my babies? But when I got to the rental office, you see the instantaneous healing when I asked God to help, the instantaneous healing when I cried out, Abba, I need you. When I got to the rental office, the lady said, let me pull your file. And when she pulled my file, it said that my rent was paid in full. Y'all, I didn't pay that. It has been decades now, and nobody I knew paid that moment. When I went back to my apartment to thank God for the victory, because we pray for it, but do we really trust him for it? And that is what this man was walking through. He wanted it. He prayed for it, but he had not fully trusted. It's in the moving that you see the miracle. So if you're walking through the storm and you get your come to Jesus moment when he meets you in the after moments and asks you, do you want to be well? Do you want that financial breakthrough that you really have been praying for? Do you want that healing that you've been asking for? Do you want that child of yours to come home and do what you always envisioned? Because some of us are longing for lives that we envision instead of recognizing the existence that we're in and asking God to make it better. This man recognized the existence that he was in. And it wasn't until he chose to cooperate with heaven when God intervened on his behalf that he got the chance to see his victory. But when Jesus saw him, he said, take up your mat and walk. He had to leave the place where he was to get his victory. You cannot always get the blessing while you were in the middle of the place of cursing. So you have to move. I got that understanding when I read this story, when I moved out of that two-bedroom apartment into a home. I called it my reset house. That house has been a blessing to me. That house is still a blessing to me. But I had to move. I had to pick up my mat. Where are you laying? What are you choosing to put your thoughts on, your actions on, your efforts on? His efforts and his actions were on that mat, thinking that if he got close enough to the pool when it was stirred by the angels, because that was the story, that he would get his blessing. You see, your blessing, just like this man's, may not come where everybody says it should, but your blessing will always come where God says it should. But you've got to decide to cooperate with heaven when Jesus gives you an action step to take. And let me tell y'all, it's not going to make sense. It's going to be counterintuitive to your thought. You're going to wonder what is going on and will I really make it? But keep going. Keep pressing. When the storms of life are raging and chaos is going, just ride the waves and keep going. Because here's the last thing I want to share with y'all in the story that I got. When he took up his mat and started walking, the Jewish leaders didn't pay attention to the healing. Their statement was, wait a minute, where is it? You can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry your sleeping mat. They were so bogged down on what the law says that they missed the miracle. Are you so bogged down in some scripted something or another that somebody said that you had to do in order for you to be blessed? And they decide when you choose to go left, when you tell you to go right, that you get what you are looking for, that you got the victory that you desire, that you now remember who you are. Don't let people hold you hostage to who they think you should be or how they think you should be functioning. Do what you know is necessary to make certain that you are whole. And if Jesus is the one that's giving you the directions and it's counterintuitive to everything that everybody says, do it. Because it's in that moment that who you are is revealed, more clarity of your strengths. You get the chance to have acknowledged and get greater insight. And that is the lesson that I learned from this. And that is where the strategies from this morning's episode came, because I had to first get an idea of what was being said about me. So that list I shared earlier, yeah, go back, listen to the strategies, because it's the strategies that will give you the actionable steps before this moment. For those of you that wanted to know where it came from and what the foundation of the lesson is sitting on, this is that moment. And so for today, if you don't remember anything else I shared, here's the one thing I want you to know. The lessons and the blessings that exist to give you support. They may sound strange. They may not come from the place that you think they should come from, but if there is a strategy, if your pain is deep enough, if your hurt is long enough, because this man's affliction was 38 years, cooperate when there's a lesson and a blessing showing up for you. Cooperate and ride out the waves of chaos to get through. And if you want someone to join you on the journey, feel free to go to my website, TanyaEhood.com. There you can click under the Work With Me tab and see the various ways that we can work with one another. And I look forward to hearing your comments, questions, and thoughts. If any of this resonated with you, or you thought of someone while I was sharing the insight, pass it on and then have them like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you all next time. In the meantime, this is Tanya E. Hood, walking in my purpose, and I want you to do the same.